Contrary to what I just said, this presentation is not about football. It's it's about alternate formats for scientific material. I want to start off by talking a little bit about previous formats that are usually supplied by publishers, and then sort of talk about why they are basically useless, entirely, absolutely, and completely useless for science materials. And then talk about another format that I've found that's a little more helpful. Let's see if I can figure this thing out. Okay. Super hyper table of contents, and we will start by talking about the process that I found usually happens when students request a book in an alternate format. So the first step is usually that the student actually makes a request, which is positive because sometimes students don't, and we don't know about these things until the last minute, after the last minute often. And I'll be specifically talking about mostly Braille today for alternate formats. So what happens once the student makes such a request for an alternate format? Well, this happens. We usually take a look at our calendars, and we realize that we don't have any time to actually do anything because class is about to be starting. So then we might try to buy our way out of it, and that also doesn't work because there's no money. So no time, no money. And so then we ask our publisher to see if they can give us an alternate format very easily and very quickly, and so we usually ask for an e-text from the publisher. And then that happens, so we usually have to wait a little bit. And I can make a number of these slides that just say wait more, because that's what usually happens. And then after we've done our fair share of waiting, we have to take the files that they give us and make them somehow useful. So there's a lot of steps there, a lot of waiting, and with science material, even after you do all those steps, you usually don't have anything that's very useful at all. So what publishers normally do, at least in my experience, is they try to get you a PDF document. And the reason for that is basically because it's the easiest thing for them to do. This is the format that their books are already in, so if they can just send us those, it's really easy. And some of the publishers try to promote that. So for example, Engage, that's one publisher I deal with a lot. They say, hey, it's going to take 10 to 15 days for you to get your books, but, wink, wink, if you ask for PDF, you might get a little quicker. So that's what they want to give you. And that's probably not the best format, but it's probably also not the worst, because it's better than getting, for example, Word or text from the publisher, because all they're going to do to make those documents is they're just going to take the PDF document and convert it and then give you the conversion. And anybody can do that. And then we just lose flexibility, because then we're given a suboptimal format that's going to lose some of the formatting, the font information, or text, or whatever, right? So probably not the worst idea to get PDF files from publishers. Okay. So what can we do with these traditional PDF files that we usually get from publishers? So there's about two approaches that I found useful. One of them is to load the PDF into Acrobat directly and use it with your screen reader. And so sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it kind of sort of does and doesn't. It all depends on the PDF document that you're given. And also, you can't make changes to your document, and it makes it harder to search if you're given that approach to dealing with your PDF documents. So the other approach that I found useful is to convert the PDF document to text. And there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Some of them are really expensive, and some of them are free. For example, there's a software called XPDF, and I use it a lot, and it's free, and it just converts your PDF documents to text format. And then you can make notes in your document and clean things up and do whatever else you want to do with a normal document. And if that program can't work because the PDF file is badly created, you can always do last resort and use OCR software, and that kind of somehow works once in a while too. So a lot of kind of somehow going on here, and the problem is that none of these approaches are going to work with science material. Okay, don't get too freaked out here. This is high school math. We're all okay. This is the quadratic formula, and it's just an example of some simple math that you might get if you ask, if you ask a publisher for a book that has math or science in it, okay? I'm not here to teach math. It's more my day job than this, but basically, I'm gonna just read what we have here. So this is an example of a PDF file you might get. So for a polynomial of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, we could solve for x using the quadratic formula x equals, and then we have a fraction. And it's really not so complicated. Just trust me on this. So the numerator is minus b, we have a plus or minus symbol, and then a big square root, and inside the square root we have some stuff, b squared minus 4ac, and then on the denominator of the fraction we have 2a, okay? So high school math. You'd hope that if we took that little tiny harmless equation and converted a document that contained that equation to text, we'd get something sensible, right? But unfortunately what happens is we get a bit of a mess. No matter what we do with a document that contains something like that, we're going to end up with something that's pretty much unreadable. For example, I tried to convert a document with that formula, with that XPDF software I just talked about, and it gave me the following. So it gave me for a polynomial of the form, and then it lost the exponents here. So that's not a huge deal, really. I mean, you might be able to guess that x2 is x squared, right? But then it says we can solve for x using the quadratic VB2 formula, x equals, and it's just a complete mess here. You'd probably get a lot of your math questions wrong if you based your approach on what you got when you converted the document with XPDF from PDF to text, right? And that is not even a tenth of what I could show you of what happens to most of my PDF documents when you try to convert them to a text format. But in some sense, we're lucky because mathematicians and scientists, myself included, are among the laziest people in the world. And we don't like to type math into standard word processors. It just takes too long. And we're just too lazy. We have a lot of football to watch. And so we like to find a quicker way of typing in math and other science material. And so we don't normally use a word processor to do it. We use something called LaTeX. It's LaTeX. And it's a markup language, and it's text only, which is good because we can actually read it. And it's like HTML in some sense, if you're familiar with that. It's just a simple markup language that's used for scientists and mathematicians to type out their documents. And this is how books get published. The authors don't send PDF documents to the publisher. They send LaTeX or another format very similar to it to the publisher. And then the publisher generates the useless PDF that they send to us. So the unfortunate thing is we have this LaTeX there, the publishers have it, and instead they send us the PDF file, which loses information for us, makes a mess out of all the math, and it otherwise takes a lot of preparation to make it useful, right? And we don't have the staff and the money and everything else that I don't want to talk about to take that PDF and make it useful. So the important thing about the source code, the LaTeX of the document, is that nothing is lost in there. That's the original. That's the document that the publisher uses to make the book and to put the book on shelves. So it's perfect, and it's text only. And so if we could access that, then we wouldn't have to do any preparation of the document. We wouldn't have to make any changes. We wouldn't have to clean anything up. We could just directly read from the source code. I'll show you what an example looks like. Probably going to freak some people out again. But so this is what you would get if you asked the publisher for the LaTeX source code of the little harmless quadratic formula that we saw a couple slides ago. So it's essentially the same when text is concerned. So for a polynomial of the form, that's just the same as before. And then we have markup here. And this is entirely readable if you've taken a few minutes to learn sort of how the markup works. But brief summary is we have dollar signs around the math content, and it's text only. We don't have any formatting or fonts here, right? Exponents are just the up arrow symbol, so it's a caret, and the number. So for x squared, we just have x caret 2, okay, that's x squared. There's no superscripts or subscripts or whatever. There's just text, and it's entirely readable with screen readers or however else you want to read it, right? There's also no cleanup, and there's also no reliance on the placement of text. For example, the fraction here, right? We have the keyword frac, so frac means fraction, and then we have its two components. So on the numerator, we have the minus b, and we have the plus or minus symbol, right? So PM is plus or minus. Square root is SQRT. So I don't want to go into it too much, but the fact is, the entire formula is represented here perfectly, and I can read this, and it wouldn't take much for students to learn how to read this, because it's really not so far off from what other markup languages look like. Okay. So my reason for using this and requesting this from publishers instead of trying to work with other formats like PDF is that if you've taken or are planning to take for fun or whatever a computer science grad course, they're tons of fun and they use tons of different books, tons of journals, tons of conferences. The course is alive essentially, and the material is just evolving as the course develops. And it's just impossible. I will stand up for the instructors on this one. It's impossible for the instructors to tell you what they're going to be using in the course. It depends on the students, it depends on the phases of the moon, it depends on a lot of different things. And it's very, very difficult for an instructor to tell you what they're going to use ahead of time. And we know how long it takes to take a PDF document and make it useful for students, right? There's no time for that. So my approach was to just ask the publishers or the authors for the original source code, right? And use that instead and directly read the science and the math content from there instead of having to do any intermediate work to make the document useful. So that's my piece. I'd be happy to talk about this further with anyone, and thanks for listening.